let's talk about the biggest idiots in all of the RWBY series. And no, I'm not talking about the characters based off of Tweedledee and Tweedledum, whom I'm sure most people don't even remember. No, instead, we are talking about the gods of light and darkness, who, well, as we learned in Volume 9, aren't really actually gods. But even though Ozpin has said he's made more mistakes than any man, woman, or child on the planet, oh boy, his mistakes are far eclipsed by those of the two brothers. They are at fault for quite literally everything plaguing Remnant at the moment. And at any point throughout its history, it's all the gods' fault. They're idiots. Well, to be fair, they're not actually stupid, per se. They're just ignorant and arrogant because they are all-powerful and they have never had anyone tell them no with the power or authority to actually do something about their actions. Starting with what we first learned about the gods and how they created all of humanity, as well as, before creating humanity, they disagreed on how they wanted to create things. The god of light wanting to create, the god of darkness more wanting to destroy. Both of them can create and destroy, but the brother of light favors more creation and the brother of darkness favors more of destruction. Hence, when the god of light tried to create life, the brother of darkness created Grimm, something that still plagues Remnant today, and eventually they came together to make one creation, humanity. Beings capable of both creation and destruction, with the knowledge that they can gain throughout their life and the choice to be able to choose which they want to use. And even though things seemed alright for the most part for hundreds, thousands of years, we're not exactly sure how long humanity existed before Salem came about, and that one individual made some mistakes. She herself was arrogant, much like the gods, and she deceived them. First going to the god of light, asking for Ozma to be brought back to life, the love that she had lost, and the god of light told her, sorry, no can do. The cycle of life and death is important and cannot be disrupted. Keep in mind that we just learned in Volume 9 that both of the brothers came from a world where ascension exists. This entire concept of the cycle of life and death was completely made up by the god of light and darkness. In fact, it seems more that the god of light was pushing this rather than the god of darkness because, well, when Salem instead went to the god of darkness after being refused by the god of light, he was just like, you know what? You're the first person to come pray to me. Sure, I'll bring him back, no problem. And then the god of light showed up and just nuked Ozma into oblivion. The god of darkness then brought him back again, and then he was atomized again. Ozma has been through a lot, through no fault of his own at this point, and the brothers themselves cannot decide on what rules they want to follow in the world that they created. They gave all of their creations the ability to choose. And when they make a mistake, instead of trying to teach them and guide them and put them on the correct path, they punish her. Which, to be fair, could be their more stern way of trying to guide Salem to make the right choices, to learn the value of life and death, which, on its surface, makes sense. The way they go about it, obviously, in retrospect, is quite wrong, but the point being, the gods can't even agree on what rules are important, what rules they want to follow. They end up on the same page that Salem needs to be punished because she made the active choice to deceive the gods. Again, they were the ones who gave her the ability to choose, but of course, as the creators, no one is allowed to choose to go against them. So they punish Salem with immortality. Another big mistake right there, because Salem becomes resentful of the gods. She then turns a portion of humanity. Remember that, it's not the entirety of humanity, it is a portion of them. Maybe it's the three major factions of humanity that she went to at the time. It looked like she went to the leaders of 3 different nations and got them on her side by saying that she stole immortality from the gods and had all of them march their army up to the gods. But in doing so, the gods see that as yet another grave mistake, that humanity would turn the gifts that were given to them on the gods that created them. And so, well, punishing the one person who committed the crime didn't seem to work the first time, so let's punish everyone else except her. I guess being alone for centuries is also a punishment in and of itself, but, you know, all of the innocent women, children, and non-combatants who did not take up the fight to attack the gods and try to steal immortality from them or take from the gods what humanity's greed desired, or at least the leaders of the kingdoms desired in their greed. No, they were all punished too. Everyone was just wiped out. Nah, you know what? Thanos snap them out of existence because they're not worth trying to correct. Instead, Remnant was a wonderful experiment, but a failed experiment now, and so they're just going to move on, leaving Salem alone, and at least the God of Light expected humanity to return again. So then brings back Ozma's soul with the ability to reincarnate into unsuspecting individuals, like-minded individuals, ideally people who would see eye to eye with Ozma, and they would be able to work towards that shared goal of... what was that again? Oh yeah, the God of Light expects one individual to help unite all individuals who each have the ability to choose, based on their own unique experiences and the knowledge that they've gained from them. They're expected to all choose the same side. Huh? The God of Light does not quite understand that all of them have been given the ability to choose. Making everyone select the same choice is nigh impossible unless they are forced to do so. And even if you put a gun to each and every person's head in the world of Remnant, which is kind of where the show seems to be going with Salem and her violent takeover and destruction of kingdom after kingdom, even then, people are still not going to choose the same. There are people who are going to fight tooth and nail against that to the death. And there are people who are going to run from the fight against Salem, there are people who are going to take up the fight against Salem, and then there are going to be people who are so scared that they're just going to join Salem's side. Everyone will not be united. The gods, at the end of the day, seem incapable of realizing that everyone has a choice, including them, and even just between the two of them. Just the brothers. They can hardly agree on what is the right choice. They have argued and bickered for as long as they've been alive. In Volume 9, we saw the true origins of the brothers. It seems like they might have been the first beings brought into existence outside of the tree in and of itself. If the Ever After is the origin of all life in the Remnant universe, then it's the tree, and the first blossoms of that tree were the brothers. Their responsibility was to tame the Ever After as it was wild and overgrown, and bring about the world that would come afterwards. They were both given the ability to destroy and to create. Now, in the depictions, it seems like the God of Darkness seems to be much more favoring the idea of destruction, whereas the God of Light much more favors creation. Maybe that is the role that they decided to each fill between the two of them, but they both have the same capabilities in all aspects of creation and destruction, at least as far as we know. And in doing so, they were able to create the Ever After. They brought things to life. They filled the world with life and gave them tasks to accomplish, built homes for them, and ultimately it seemed like everything was great in the beginning. But then, when their job was complete, they still wanted to do more. They started experimenting in secrecy, creating things that they were never intended to create. As the blacksmith said to Team RWBY at the end of Volume 9, they grew curious and grew much more than the tree ever expected them to. And the tree, although it has a will of its own, quite obviously, it doesn't seem to act out against any one individual. It seems to let most beings go about their life, and if they seek out the tree, seek out change, seek out rebirth, then the tree will happily help them along that path, but doesn't seem to directly interfere with anyone's life. Even though the cat, and presumably the gods of light and darkness, could send people to the tree doesn't go out and actively bring people to it unless, I guess, they first have the desire to go to the tree, as was seen with Jean, Weiss, Blake, and Yang at the end of Volume 9. But beyond that. I'm getting a little bit off the point here. The gods grew beyond what the scope of their creation was. They started creating more things. They made the curious cat, someone that they realized could fill the role that they used to fill for the Ever After, which gave them the freedom to do more. And then they created something to finish what the cat had started. They created the Jabberwocker, a being of essentially pure destruction, where the cat continued the cycle of sending afterends to the tree whenever they needed a new purpose, whenever they broke, whenever they needed repair, etc. The Jabberwocker was there to end that cycle. As the blacksmith said, it was brutal, but it was effective. And the gods disagreed on how to handle that. They both agreed that the Jabberwocker was a mistake, but they disagreed on how to handle that mistake. It was the god of light that wanted to just destroy the Jabberwocker, whereas the god of darkness felt that their creation should not be punished for its mistakes. Which could imply that the god of darkness felt it was their own mistake and they should take responsibility for it. But regardless, the fact is, they disagreed on how to handle that. And it was the god of light that wanted to destroy it, whereas the god of darkness was the one who didn't want to punish the Jabberwocker. That sounds kind of reverse of what happened in Remnant, right? Whereas the god of darkness was the one who just, nuke all of humanity. The god of light didn't necessarily want that to happen. Depending on the situation, depending on how each individual god feels wronged, they disagree on how to handle things. But they never seem to hold themselves accountable for the mistakes that they made. And at its core, that is the biggest issue that Remnant is facing. The gods never hold themselves accountable. And I think by the end of the RWBY series, they're going to have to be held accountable. When they are resummoned, it is going to be RWBY who is going to tell them exactly that. They have made so many mistakes. They have allowed everyone the ability to choose, and you expect people to make the choices that you want them to make. Everyone is an individual, and even the gods have made differing choices. Which is okay, but you just need to understand what exactly is going on. The blacksmith in Volume 9, when talking about the gods and how they disagreed, started talking about how to find balance. That it requires love and the patience to see things through to the end. Something that the gods of light and darkness have never done, as far as we can tell. When they were in the Ever After, they created everything in the Ever After. Presumably, they brought it to the end and saw it through to the end, but then they kind of screwed things up by creating imperfect beings to fill the roles that they once had. They themselves are imperfect beings and could never create perfect beings, and that's understandable, but with nothing to police things, the Ever After fell into disarray. The Ever After, in and of itself, could no longer bear the experiments of the gods. They were ruining what they had initially created, and so the Ever After created a door for the gods to go and try creating worlds of their own. Experiments like Remnant. The overall experiment of Remnant could have been to create a race of beings, humanity, with a cycle of life and death, creating mortals that will naturally die and have that cycle be permanent. That could have been the purpose in the God of Light's mind as to what the purpose of humanity, what the point of that experiment was. Maybe that wasn't conveyed to the God of Darkness. We don't even know what the overall experiment was. This is just my speculation, but it would make sense. It's just they both didn't seem to be on the same page, as they seem to rarely be on the same page. But that doorway is left open for the brothers to return, as well as any of their creations. And ultimately, I think the brothers will have to return. Once they realize how big of idiots they've been, because of the mistakes that they've made, the lack of self-awareness that they have, the arrogance that they have had throughout the RWBY series, throughout their entire existence, they're probably going to go back to the tree and go through the ascension process to become something new. What that will end up being, no one really knows until we see it on screen. Hopefully we will get some closure to that storyline. I'm guessing we probably will, but at the end of the day, a lot of stuff is just their fault. They created everyone with the ability to choose in the way that they punished Salem as well as the rest of humanity, leaving Salem alone as the sole person, not only that is immortal, but also with the power of magic that no one in the second coming of humanity has. Was just such a huge mistake. Not only did they punish all of the first generation of humanity for Salem's mistakes, which she was only able to make thanks to their mistake of giving her immortality in the first place, she then punishes all of humanity that comes afterwards by leaving Salem alive and having her be this all-powerful being that can torment them for their entire history. I'm sure the gods never expected Salem to gain control of the Grimm and use them to her own devices. I'm sure the God of Darkness probably would not have been happy about his creations being used in that way, but, well, they did not have the patience to see their experiment through to the end. Instead, they punished Salem, punished humanity, and left. They did leave an opportunity to be resummoned, but only if everyone was united. Otherwise, they're just going to wipe everyone out yet again. The gods are idiots, and hopefully, by the end of the show, they will have their idiocy pointed out to them, and I think RWBY is the perfect person to do so, which will be the topic of my next video. But let me know down in the comments below what you guys think of the gods of light and darkness, and their questionable choices over the course of the history of Remnants, the Ever After, and I guess the RWBY universe as a whole. I look forward to hearing your thoughts down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, make sure to subscribe and join the Guild of the Eternal Flame. Catch me on Twitch as well. I stream every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Would love to talk about RWBY or anything else with you there, so make sure to drop a follow. And I'll see you guys in the next video.